Buckle up. We're taking you to Costa Mesa. Yeah, Raiders training camp is underway, and we're breaking down the latest storylines. Let's do this thing. Sin City Beat starts right now.
From Las Vegas, this is Sin City Beat.
Hello and welcome to Sin City Beat. I'm Mike Davis. Thanks for joining us. Sin City Beat is the show that dissects the Vegas sports world through the eyes of the sports reporters and storytellers leading the charge. Now, on today's show, we're breaking down the top storylines going down at Raiders training camp. Joining the action on today's panel, we have Steve Cofield, host of Cofield and Company on ESPN Las Vegas. We have our very own sports reporter and anchor, Paloma Villicana with Fox 5 Las Vegas. And joining us for the first time, we have former NFL linebacker with the Dolphins, Texans, and Raiders, Morlon Greenwood. Great to have you guys with us. So let's dive right in. We're starting with the biggest storyline, the constant narrative of the entire offseason, the QB battle between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. Paloma, let me start with you. Who should have the job, and who's going to actually get the job?
So Kevin Bollinger is down in Costa Mesa with the Raiders, and what I've seen on social media is just one name. It really is Minshew. I mean, I've seen Minshew, 2 Bowers, all camp.
Right.
And I think Raider Nation is excited to see their weapon, Brock Bowers, out there. He's caught some dimes from Minshew this training camp. Aiden O'Connell, second-year quarterback, he showed a lot to us in his first year. But when you talk about experience, when you talk about that veteran leadership, the situations that Gardner Minshew has been in, that's just what I've seen from Kevin Bollinger's reports is, you know, number 15 out there with his long, cool hair in California. You know, he's got that vibe. But when you have a locker room with older guys that are experienced, you got obviously Max Crosby in there, who's very vocal and a leader. You know, I think that's what this team is looking for is kind of that leadership on offense with just so many new pieces this season. So we'll see who lands the winning job. But like Antonio Pierce said, you know, he'll be playing all guys this preseason.
Now, Marlon, when you're part of a team and you're going through a QB battle, when you don't really know who's the leader of your team is going to be, what is that like for a team, for the players on the defensive side of the ball, throughout the entire organization? What is it like when you have a QB battle? Because it's one thing to have, a battle in the secondary. It's another thing to have a battle with the face of your team.
Well, you know, the quarterback is the leader of your team. You know, you think about guys like Tom Brady, the guy that come out and really lead the team to success. Everything starts there. So sometimes that QB battle kind of leave some unsettling things with the team to begin with. Who we're going to go with, who we're going to root for, who's going to be our guy, who's the one we can count on, right? But it's also good for the team to be able to see who the best guy for the team to be able to play. So it's good to give them the good opportunities to be able to identify that. But once you identify that, then you can go full steam ahead with knowing who the guy is.
And I'm sure there's a sentiment that kind of trickles through the locker room. You also, I like how you brought up Brady. You did sack Brady once. I remember
in
that.
college.
In college. I remember you did do that. That must have felt glorious.
They protected him well in the NFL.
How does he feel when you bring down Tom Brady? What does that feel like?
You know, to be honest, I don't even remember it.
Hey, he is an Orange man. He did a great job in Syracuse. Yeah. Steve, tell us. I want to know who really should have the job and who is going to get the job. Is it the same person?
Yes. Minshew should have the job, and he will have the job. I don't really understand, outside of not crushing Akon's hopes, why this is a 50-50 race. I guess they like competition in camp, but I think everyone on the team knows that Minshew is going to be the quarterback, and I think Minshew being the quarterback early is important because they need to get off to a quick start. The last thing you want to have is midseason last year Devontae Adams all angry because he's not involved or he's getting lit up because of poorly thrown balls.
Right.
Minshew needs to be the guy, and they signed him to a pretty big deal. They made a commitment. He's the guy.
I feel like he has the swagger. He has a little bit of that confidence. Look at him right there. If anybody screams Southern California, it's Uncle Rico. I mean, I like this guy. I actually have enough confidence in him where he can get you some of those wins if the defensive side of the ball is playing well. Marlon, when you were playing with the Dolphins, you guys had guys like Brian Griese, Sage Rosenfeld, Jay Fiedler, people like that. When you have a quarterback who's, not the echelon of the league, not the top guy guy who's a top 10 guy, like a Peyton Manning or something, what does it feel like when you have a quarterback who's a little lesser in that role? Do you feel like the rest of the team has to show up and do more? You have to play outside yourself because you don't have Patrick Mahomes throwing the football?
You know, I always think like a team should be a team. You know, everybody needs to do their part, and if everyone does their part, ultimately we win. And we didn't win a lot of games with Jay Fiedler. We went to the playoff my rookie year. You know, we were 11-5. You know, we beat New England. The first game I played when I came off an injury. The first game started, which was nerve-wracking, by the way. But
I bet.
You know, but you know, I feel like if everybody plays the way they're supposed to be, how they're supposed to, I think they're going to do well. And we don't get into the thought of you know, this guy. That's stuff for the media. You know, that's stuff that the media normally comes down. They were kind of comparing him to Dan Marino, because Dan Marino just so if everything Jay Fiedler did, well, Dan would have done this and Dan would have done that. But we have a team, you know, we supported him, and we go into every game with the full confidence that he can get the job done.
So real quickly, as we're wrapping up, we got from Steve, we know you're going with Gardner. Who are you taking, Gardner?
I mean, he's the guy with the most experience, and we saw Aiden last year was thrown into the fire, kind of a rough rookie season for Aiden O'Connell. I'm going with Minshew.
Okay, what about you?
You know what? I never go with anyone until I see them start playing, and when things start coming at them and see how they respond.
Okay.
Because you can have a top draft pick, someone say this guy's going to be the greatest thing and he's going to do this to come in training camp in the NFL. They don't do anything. But then when you can have a guy that drafted less, they come in and then the monster rise up, right?
Yeah,
inside of them, and they go there. So I like to see what they're capable of doing before I start saying what they're going to do.
We've seen it with Brady, we've seen it with Purdy, we've seen it with a lot of guys. All right, guys, next up, it might be the first training camp for Antonio Pierce as a full-time head coach, and with that comes questions and potential concerns. Thankfully, he surrounded himself with a lot of head coach experience. We're going to explain after the break.
You're watching Sin City Beat.
All right, welcome back to Sin City Beat. Well, he went from interim to full-time, and now Antonio Pierce is experiencing his first training camp as a full-time head coach. Thankfully, AP is going to have a bunch of support from a well-experienced coaching staff. I'm talking about a staff that consists of assistant head coach Marvin Lewis. We all remember him from the Bengals. Senior offensive assistant Joe Philbin with the Dolphins. We remember him as a head coach. And special advisor, even at 77 years old, Tom Coughlin from the Giants. So, Marlon, let's go to you. How critical is it to have a staff with head coaching experience? Not guys who are just young studs who are going to be head coaches one day, but to have a staff of guys who have filled that role of a head coach.
You know, it's always great to have great mentors, especially when you have young talent that have all the potential. It's to guide that talent and guide it in the right direction. Think of Mike Tyson, how much talent he had, but he had Costa Mesa to guide him along the way, to help him to be the youngest heavyweight champion in the world. It's the same thing here. And Tom Coughlin from Syracuse.
Exactly. You gotta bring up Syracuse.
Yeah, you know, Super Bowl champion. So that is a good group of guys to be around that had the experience. You know, that's one thing you cannot teach is experience, and that's where wisdom comes in. And so for him to be able to recognize that and know that shows what type of coach he is, to be able to embrace that and embrace mentorship and guidance to help him to be successful.
Now, the other side of the coin of this, Steve and Paloma, is that the NFL has changed. And, you know, does a 77-year-old Tom Coughlin understand the ways of the game? Does a Marvin Lewis have his finger on the pulse as much as some of these younger guys who might be coaches who lean more to bridging relationships with players? And that's why I find it fascinating, because AP is kind of like that coach. Less X's and O's, more of a players type coach. How do you think they're going to craft that balance?
I mean, speaking to AJ Cole this offseason at Battle for Vegas, he told me for the first time in a long time they're all swimming in the same direction this offseason in the building, working out, guys wanting to be there. So he's told me that, you know, there's a culture shift in the building with AP becoming head coach.
Yeah.
You know, obviously when he came in as head coach, we immediately saw their swagger come back, their excitement in that locker room, they're smoking cigars. The guys just looked happy.
Right.
And now they got this new staff, and they're out in Costa Mesa for the first time, locked in, no distractions. So you can only say this is a step forward for Raider Nation as far as their coaching staff, the culture in that building, because let's be honest, it was a disaster with Josh McDaniels. And you can just see it on and off the field that the guys were just totally not together. So with this new coaching staff, you can only be excited for this year for the Raiders.
And that says a lot about, a coach when they can gather a bunch of guys who have a pedigree, guys who won 2 Super Bowls like, Cofield, to be a part of the team and the part of the system. What do you think about this roster, this slate of guys, and this experience that he has in the fold?
Well, to build on Paloma's point from Cole, the lack of trust with McDaniels was out of control, right? They weren't going in the right direction, and I think because Pierce has brought this together, he's brought in guys he knows that he trusts. I love that he has an ego, but he's not so worried about being a young coach that he doesn't want to be outshined by other people during the week. I think that's massive. And for veteran players or young players to be able to lean on an older guy during the week, I don't think that's going to be much on game days. That's good. They have a mix of younger coaches. So I think AP has nailed it, and I think he recognized there were some things he didn't know last year. And any job, you have to understand what you don't know, and if you need help, bring someone in, even if it's going to appear they could usurp you in terms of power and reputation. Don't worry about it. He's going to be a good coach, but you need veterans around on the coaching staff to lean on.
It's important to have that humility and to know what you don't know. We see Tom Coughlin right there. So, Morlon, who did you respond better to as a player all these years in the NFL? I mean, you played with the Dolphins, you played with the Texans. You had coaches like Dom Capers, Dave Wanstatt, Gary Kubiak, so many great coaches. Even, Vic Fangio was a coach of yours. So did you respond more to the guys who were the X's and O's type of guys who knew ball and knew game, or was it more of the guys who just were leadership guys, locker room type coaches?
So I'm glad you asked that question. I had a lot of great coaches. Jim Bates has drafted me. Bob Sanders, my rookie coach in Miami, the linebackers. When I went to Houston, I had a coach by the name of Johnny Holland. He's coaching at the San Francisco 49ers now. He played in the NFL, started in the NFL for 7 years with Green Bay Packers, and then he had an injury where he stopped playing. But he was my best coach because of he played the game. He understand what it was like to be out there. And so when you draw up the X's and O's, sometimes it'd be like, Morlon, we draw it up like this, and I know we draw it up like it'll look like this, but once the game starts, it's gonna be like this. So he kept it real, like it could change. Some coaches that haven't been in that situation, they cannot explain it to you how it's gonna happen in real time. And I think one of the things with Antonio Pierce is he's been a middle linebacker. Middle linebacker is the leader of the defense. That's why he has to be the one to be the vocal. He has to be the one to pick the team up, and that's what he's doing for the Raiders right now. He's being that middle linebacker, being the head coach.
And it's a lot like being, a catcher in baseball. I mean, we see what Fred Warner does with the 49ers. He really acts as a quarterback of that defense, being a middle linebacker. But I just love the fact of relationships. I think relationships are such a big deal, obviously, in sports. And for him to bring in his, his coach was Tom Coughlin. So to have that relationship still building is a beautiful thing. And I love even the synergy. Robert Saleh was a defensive assistant with you with the Texans. So I guess he brought in his cohort that you had there with
absolutely.
him.
And to add to the different coaching, I would recognize Robert Saleh when he was there in Houston, how hard he worked, how diligent he was, and how we just kind of bring everyone together. And I was like, wherever this guy goes, he's going to be successful.
And of course,
same thing with D'Amico Ryans and all the other coaches that I was around there in Houston. We had a great coaching staff.
It's a beautiful thing. And listen, sometimes you don't get along, like Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers, but we're not going to talk about that in this show. All right, so we have another first time we got to talk about. Yes, it's the first time the Raiders are having training camp in Southern California at Costa Mesa. So coming up, we're going to be telling you about these restrictions that are coming along with camp in Costa Mesa. All right, camp is going down in Costa Mesa, and beyond football, there's some weirdness associated with the experience. Yes, here's the basics. So if a team is holding preseason training camp in an exclusive territory, for instance, in this case, the Raiders being in California and Costa Mesa, they're impeding on the Rams and the Chargers in LA. Then that camp cannot be marketed locally, right? So therefore, the Raiders can't allow local fans to attend practices, nor can they invite local Los Angeles media to practice or to publicize or market the practices itself. So, Steve, is this a big deal or non-news? And how do you feel about training camp moving overall in general to Costa Mesa? So these restrictions, is this non-news?
It's news, but it's in the media bubble more than anything about who can be there, who can't, how much you can publicize it. I think the bigger picture is it's very anti-fans. There are a lot of Raiders fans in Southern California. They should be able to go to camp. It should be publicized. And when you pair this anti-fan move with what's going on in court with DirecTV and Sunday Ticket, which I'm guessing is going to be thrown out, they basically, one judge ruled that we got ripped off for years and years and years. So while the NFL does a good job on many fronts, this one I think is terrible. And they should have been able to talk down the Chargers management and the Rams management and say, hey, it's for the betterment of the league. They're nowhere near where you guys train. Cut it out. And
what about just the fact that they're not here and they're practicing there?
I think it's a good move.
You do.
I think this is going to sound ridiculous, but I think the creature comforts of that facility in Henderson, you need to get away. Plus, it's hot as Hades here in August and late July. It's completely ridiculous. I hope the former football player, Morlon, is like, no, like I like having to rough it. I think having to rough it for a little bit, for 3 weeks, is a good thing.
Okay, I like that. And you saw they had, when they put pads on practice, does that, as a linebacker, that you love that, you live for that, right? When pads come on, right?
Yeah, you definitely are excited to put the pads on because you can actually know when to run or pass. Because sometimes when you don't have pads on, it's kind of difficult to decipher. You got to really work on your technique and to be able to read that. But sometimes that also hinders you a little bit because you got to get used to wearing it, the weight of it, having the shoulder pad, the restriction of raising your arms, and when you're going up to catch and different things like that. Even though we don't play wide receiver, but we also catch interceptions, right? So those type of things. But definitely, it's always good to be able to have those different transitions in the training camp to be able to help you to develop to be, the player that you want to be when it comes time for the preseason games or for the opening day. Yeah.
All right. So there's some restrictions with pads, and then there's restrictions with the media with this stuff. Paloma, as somebody who's, you're a maven when it comes to reporting in the media. I mean, how do you feel about all this stuff and this news of these restrictions?
I think our opinions don't matter because Antonio Pierce just straight up said, we're here to be in Costa Mesa so we can get as tight as possible. New coach, new GM, new coaches, new players, new quarterback. Everyone's new on this roster, including some veterans that are returning. But you got to get the new group of guys together, get them out camping, get them away from Las Vegas. There's a lot to do here in this city, great places to eat and go out. So obviously, they're escaping the heat, but I think it's more of getting this new group of guys to gel together. We talk about, all the work that's put in during training camp, how important these days are, getting ready for the preseason and for the season to kick off. So we'll see how this going to Costa Mesa pays off for the Raiders. And I know to AP, it was really important to him to get his guys out of town.
I like that. I think you need that time for bonding. Marlon, when you're drafted in 01, you go to training camp for the first time with the Dolphins. They always have rookies do some weird things, right? You got to bring Krispy Kreme donuts. You got to carry somebody's jock strap. What was the worst thing you had to do?
I didn't have to do that.
What was the worst thing you had to
do? During my rookie year, I was projected to be a starter, then I got hurt, right? So I had a long story. I told you I had a throwing needle in my foot from walking barefoot on the ground in Jamaica.
Right.
But that's another story. So I was on crutches, right, because I couldn't find out what was wrong with my foot. So didn't have any broken bones, but found out I got the needle. I was on crutches, during training camp when you're hurt. Everybody kind of forget about you and everything. But Jason Taylor was like, Marlon, don't think we forgot about you. Come on over here and come sing your rookie song.
You sang Bob Marley. I know you did.
Yeah, I didn't do Bob Marley. I actually did one of my songs I wrote in college because I do music. I've been writing songs since 9th grade in high school.
Right.
And I did a song called Blow the Skylines Out of Proportion that I wrote in college, everything I wanted to accomplish. And that means not to limit yourself to anything. Cause everybody always talk about the sky's the limit. In music over and over, there's no limit to what you can accomplish. So that's why the song was
That's a great story.
There you go. That's the story. And guess what? We have more good stuff away coming on, and we're going to stick around because guess what? Marlon might be singing for us in the next one. All right, we'll see you in a sec. All right, welcome back. So I'm always curious about this as an outsider. When it comes to training camp, can you actually tell if a team is going to be legit or not just from inferring strictly things from training camp? So Marlon, let me go to you.
Yeah.
When you're in training camp, do you know, okay, this team is legit or this team is not legit and we're in big time trouble?
You know, you definitely know off the bat, you know, by the personnel that you have, by their effort, where they're working, where the coaching staff is working together, the sense of urgency, and how people come to work each and every day. That definitely is a big indicator of what type of team you have. And as you start to see how they're doing their playmaking ability and be like, wow, I think we have a really good team here, until you play in the first game and be like, I think we really have a good team here. Then play in the second one, wow, I think we might have, you know.
Okay,
so you definitely see it.
There's a lot of meaning we can glean from it. I like that. Okay, so from the outside looking in, guys, tell me, Paloma, how do you feel about heading into this season right now as we're kicking off training camp?
From what I've seen from our footage down there in Costa Mesa, I mean, I'm excited about the offensive weapons that the Raiders have this year. Obviously, we know their defense is solid with 3-time Pro Bowler Max Crosby, and the defense, you know, played lights out last year.
Yeah.
But Brock Bowers, I mean, he looks explosive. I mean, you got Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers out there. You got Devontae Adams. You know, we're talking all about the quarterbacks and Minshew and who's going to get the starting job. I mean, just throw the ball to your weapons, and I think you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Devontae Adams, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer out there.
It's going to be fun.
There's a lot of question marks on offense, but what I'm seeing through training camp is that these guys are explosive, and I think what I've seen from training camp, this team is automatically better than last year's squad.
Okay, and Steve, you add Christian Wilkins into the mix too. That could free up a lot with Max, as well as if Wilson actually develops as well too. That would be exciting.
I think they've got an upside of 9 or 10 wins, but I also think they have a downside if things don't go well in a lot of areas of 6 or 7 wins, which is not terrible. It's kind of a bad place to be, though. You want to be really bad or make the playoffs,
right.
really bad for future interest. But yeah, Minshew's got to stay healthy. I think they've got to make sure it's a simple offense, because it was not simple the last couple of years with McDaniels, and get all those weapons involved. And the other thing is Zamir White's got to be really good. Josh Jacobs going bye-bye. He had a lot of production, over 5,000 total yards. You don't just replace that easily, so Zamir's got to step up.
Well,